Yeah, thank you for joining us today as I run through the top 5 questions asked about OpenAthens. So let me just share my screen and bring up my slides. Perfect. Hopefully, yeah, you can see the opening slide. Yeah, so what we're going to do is just run through the top 5 questions asked about OpenAthens. And so where did these questions come from? Well, they've come from various conferences you might see us at, from our inbox that comes, requests that come through that way, and just general meeting these prospects and customers and things that they ask us about OpenAthens. A little bit about myself. So my name is James Edwards. I'm the Senior Business Development Manager for OpenAthens, and I cover North America, UK Nordics, and a bit of Europe, Africa, and Israel as well for OpenAthens. And I've been here for about 7, 8 years now. So yeah, I feel like I do know quite a bit about authentication. To be honest, it was a sector, the library and research sector was not an area I'd worked in before I got this role. But I just love the sector environment. Everyone is so welcoming, and I really want to share as much as I can and help people out along the way. And OpenAthens gives us the opportunity to do that. One thing about OpenAthens that we're aiming to do here is we are looking to remove those barriers to knowledge. That is what OpenAthens is all about. Those barriers can come in many different forms, and we'll cover those a bit today during this webinar, and how we are helping to remove those for librarians and also, most importantly, those end users. So what are the 5 questions we're going to cover? So the 5 questions we're going to get is, what is OpenAthens? How is OpenAthens different to Easy Proxy? What is federated authentication? I hear OpenAthens as a reporting module. What sort of usage reports can OpenAthens provide? And how long and what is involved in the implementation of OpenAthens? So these questions have come from a wide range of people. Some of them are librarians, some of them are very experienced librarians, some of them might be new librarians, some of them will be end users, students who are asking, what is this OpenAthens I see everywhere? And some of them are just people who are curious at conferences coming by. And these are what we kind of see as the ones that get asked the most. There is a lot to cover here, and so I can't promise you that we'll go into sort of solid detail on a lot of these. Some of these questions have more than just one answer to them, but I'll do my best, and I'm hoping that by the end of today's session, you will understand what OpenAthens kind of is, and maybe some of the benefits and values it can come to yourselves and your institution. I would say if it piques your interest and you'd like to know a bit more about OpenAthens, then we can certainly arrange a demo call, sort of one-on-one, and we can delve into these in a lot more detail and specifically for your institution. So let's start off with quite a big one. What is OpenAthens? So there are multiple ways to answer this, and there are lots of answers to it. It depends how you want to approach it and how you want to look at it as a product. So do you want to know about OpenAthens as a product? Do you want to know about it as a business? And I'll cover some of those right now in this webinar. So at OpenAthens, our vision is to be the world's most user-friendly information access management experience. And I wanted to show this because this is something that we truly do stick to and want to believe in. But there's some wording in there that's very key to what OpenAthens is for some. So in there, it has access management. And so if you took OpenAthens and you wanted to categorize it as a product, it would be probably classed as an identity and access management solution. Sadly, there are other words for that. You could say it's a single sign-on solution. There are many sort of parts to it. But that is one part. So, you could say, what is OpenAthens? If you said it's an identity and access management solution, you wouldn't be wrong, but it's also still not providing that much detail. So, part of that, what we believe in, and that our vision, is that making subscription-based content, that it should be fast, easy, and pain-free for your users. We don't want them to be struggling with multiple passwords, and dealing with forgotten passwords or clunky different software. It's all about making the content as straightforward for them to get access to and put it in their hands, so that, in the case of students, they are doing their research, they need it to be right there and then for them. Admittedly, when I was at university, I wasn't the best sort of student in terms of research and coming to things. And having moved into this sector, it amazes me of how much goes on in a library space. But I think if I knew what I knew now and going back then, I would make so much more use of what tools are available to us. And in particular, the information that you can get hold of. by making that as straightforward for the students, the more likely they are going to come across it. And we'll touch on how we do that at OpenAthens from the answers in a couple of the other questions a bit later. But those are some of the few things that we focus on and what we believe in here at OpenAthens. So another thing, if you said, what is OpenAthens? And you said it is the complete solution. That also would be another correct answer for OpenAthens. And what we mean by complete solution is that we are, we have a hybrid solution that covers all these sort of different methods of authentication. So I don't want to delve into too much about authentication today and all the different types out there, but there are sort of two main types, and there's a few that they're kind of blurred into others here. So you sort of have SAML and federated authentication, very similar there. And you also, and into that you have single sign-on, SSO, but, one that's probably used the most is IP. And with that, proxy IP authentication or recognition, as it might be really truly known as. And so OpenAthens is the complete solution. And we've got a little video here just to demonstrate in case you've already, 5 minutes in, you don't hear too much more of my voice. We've just got a little intro which could hopefully explain the complete solution better than I can.
OpenAthens is the complete solution. They look to future-proof you and specialize in SAML, single sign-on, and federated authentication. However, they know that in the industry, not everyone is ready to move, so they also support a managed proxy. They cover different authentication methods as they aim to remove barriers to knowledge and enable access to resources regardless of where the user journey starts.
That's really good and absolutely what we need.
It'll definitely make your life much easier. Everything in one tool, all access and full support.
Perfect. Yeah. So that is hopefully explained, another answer to what is OpenAthens. It is the complete solution. It's a method of all these authentications into one solution. And your users don't need to know how they get into the content, but we are getting them there. So that, yeah, another answer to what is OpenAthens is the complete solution. So a bit more about the background of OpenAthens. So what is it today? Who are we? So we've been around since 1995. That's when we started, and I'll touch on that in a little bit more in a moment. And we've grown now to sort of 3,000 customers worldwide, all across the academic sector, but also in the medical, corporate, anywhere that needs that research, desire to access journals, to access ebooks. OpenAthens can provide a solution for you. And yeah, those 8 million end users worldwide, daily using the service to get access to that content. OpenAthens is quite a small company. I mean, it kind of has that startup vibe. There's about 100 of us or so employed by OpenAthens, but we have a network of global resellers that really help to support and grow our customers across the global side of things. And yeah, we have a very good set of resellers based in the North America who can support OpenAthens. And we have many customers. In fact, most of our customers will choose to go down that route. We can touch on that a bit later at the end if there's time. So then, a bit of our history, what is OpenAthens as a product? So as I said, we started in 1995. We were based out of the University of Bath here in the UK, where librarians actually had this issue. They had spreadsheets of usernames, passwords, and who's accessing what, how they access, and then thought there has to be a better way of doing this. And so OpenAthens came about from that. So we are designed by librarians for librarians. In 1997, we were kind of moved into this EduServe, which was a not-for-profit organization here in the UK. And then we've had a couple of milestones along the way. So the NHS joining us was a big moment for us in terms of supporting that medical sector and the research there. And then in 2006, we hit a milestone of 2 million users, which you can see how we've grown from that. And then 2013, this was actually a really big part for us. It was just the OpenAthens Federation. So the Federation is a word you're going to hear me say quite a bit throughout this. We've got a question on it. What is it? And what is a federated authentication? So I'll touch on a bit more of that a bit later. But that is really the core of what everything we do now at OpenAthens is based around that federation. And then lastly, recently, in 2019, we were merged into JISC. And if you don't know JISC, it's another not-for-profit organization here in the UK that supports the higher education, further education, so universities, colleges, schools and things here in the UK with anything kind of in that research space. And although we are obviously a global company part of that, but it's very focused on that research and academic sector, and it's really good to have that backing and support from JISC there. There's many other milestones in there we considered. We obviously had the signing of Galileo. The state of Georgia, every sort of academics library out there will be using OpenAthens or is using OpenAthens, and that's how we've had it over the last few years. And we've had some big milestones in North America that has really helped to see OpenAthens grow in that territory. So yeah, just to recap then, what is OpenAthens? There's lots of answers to that. It is a UK-based company. It is an identity and access management solution. It is the complete solution. And so hopefully, from that is kind of the answers, depending how you ask the question, that we would provide. There's a lot more detail in that, obviously, and so we'll touch on much of that now. But yeah, hopefully that's given you a kind of a nice, a quick answer to that if you were asked. And you wouldn't be wrong with any of those answers. So another one, this one is the big one, particularly in North America, is how is OpenAthens different to EasyProxy? So, we are talking about remote authentication systems here. And when it comes to the library sector, there really is only sort of two. Well, there are more, but mostly the two ones are EasyProxy, or that's the one a lot will have. And then there is also OpenAthens. And so when you're comparing, it is quite difficult because although they're doing the same thing, they are doing it quite differently, and that has different outcomes and different things like that. So there was a couple of bits I wanted to touch on, from this as just a very broad question. Obviously, if you wanted to know directly about your own EasyProxy and your institution, that's something we can have on another call. The big one is the technical difference. So on the right here, you have IP proxy recognition going on, and then on the left, you've got OpenAthens authentication, which is what we'll call a SAML handshake happening there. And so these are ways on which users are gaining access to content. The one we're familiar with, the IP and the proxy there, you can see all those users are funneled into one IP address that is shared with the publisher. The publisher will have that IP address on their system to say it is part of this license or part of this institution, and then they will be granted access. So using an IP proxy or proxy, so proxy will be used when you're using remote access. IP will be used when they're on site on the campus. But it's both kind of doing the same thing in terms of that IP address is what's being used. It's good in that it's anonymous users, you could say, but there are risks around that. It's insecure, it's open to spoofing, and to be honest, it's kind of legacy technology. Not many other sectors, I would say, rely upon IP as a method of recognition, as that is all it is. And yeah, there are some user benefits that come with using SAML that you won't get with IP that I'll touch on. So in the SAML handshake, these users, they stay as individuals throughout the process. And it gives that kind of two-way transparency between the publisher and the library and the user there. I will stress the user's identity is kept anonymous. So we're not telling publishers who is who, and we'll touch on that again a bit later. But that added level of security that knowing this user is part of that institution, it is a really good little bit of security there. And there's some benefits that I'll show that will come with that. The other difference between OpenAthens and EasyProxy that is clear to state is that OpenAthens is always fully managed, fully hosted service, whereas obviously with EasyProxy you might have a locally installation, or you might have a hosted version of it. So there could be some differences there depending on which one you have. So without knowing more about your own institution and your setup of EasyProxy, that is the key ones we're going to bring in there on a technical side of things. There's obviously how the service will look, how you administer it in some ways, but that's really saved for another time. But hopefully this gives you a clear understanding that OpenAthens is offering a different method of access. Alongside, we do offer managed proxy as well as part of our service, but we predominantly want to use this federated SAML handshake as a method of access. And as I say, using that SAML method, there comes benefits to the end user. So as a librarian, your benefits are IT will probably really like to hear this, that you can use SAML as a method of authentication over IP that's more secure. And so, your services are more secure, and that's a much better way. Your content should be more protected. The other benefit, though, is for your end users and their experience. So I've just got this short video, which I'm going to just play here, which is a user trying to access content on the web. They're not going via the library. They're looking for this assessment of clinical performance for nursing students. They've got access to that content, and they've clicked access through your organization. And this will then take them to a screen, depending on how they've got here, on how to actually access that. So in this case, they've got to search for their institution, they find their university, and they will then be redirected to their university login screen if they haven't already logged in. And then if they could log in at that point, if they log in, they will then get access to the content if it is available as part of their subscription from the institution. So what we're trying to demonstrate there is that users can go find content that you provide them via the web. And that's a really massive benefit, considering as we see more and more content, more and more users, these days, using the likes of just standard Google or Google Scholar to access content. And if they are arriving at these sites and aren't able to log in, which with Easy Proxy, you wouldn't be able to do from a lot of those sites. You wouldn't be able to log in at that site itself. You would have to redirect them somewhere back to the library, and they'd have to learn to go to the content for it that way. OpenAthens gives them that option because of the federated method of access there to log in at the page. And one of the interesting things that comes out of this is during the setup, once we kind of start setting up the resources, getting them going, often a library will be like, oh, we've got a go live date. That's when we want to be go live. But they'll start seeing usage appearing within the first 2 weeks, and they'll be like asking questions as to why that is. And it is purely from users that are just going via the web. Students, they're very, they're very inventive these days in how they will get to content, and they will just find ways to it. And we just make it a lot easier for them to make sure that they're going through the right channels. And so that might have been, usage that was lost before. You should hopefully see less tickets raised about how to access content, but also, you might get requests of content you already provide, and you just have to show them how to get there. This should hopefully reduce all of those for you. And then another benefit is personalization. So because in that SAML handshake I showed you just a moment ago, you saw that the users stayed as individuals. Not only do we log users into the site, the publisher, whatever they're trying to access, but if they offer personalization, so what we mean by that is user accounts, like EBSCO will do it, Elsevier do it. They often have, you set up a personal account with them. They're not just logged into the site, but also into their personal account at the same time. So there's, again, one less step of logging in, so they can keep their saved searches, their content, whatever they put into those, without having to remember to log in or log in each time to access it. It will all be done in that seamless single sign-on environment. That I will stress, it's not done by sending personal information over, personally identifiable information. It's just the fact that that user is still unique to that publisher. So that's, some differences there of OpenAthens compared to Easy Proxy. There's a lot more to delve into that, but I think those are the main ones and the key ones to remember, going away from this session. So this one's quite a difficult one, to be honest, to answer in a short call, but what is federated authentication? So I've chosen a few things where you might have heard of federated or federations before. Those who are really not sure about anything, often they'll mention about how is it related to Star Trek. There is nothing to do with Star Trek in here, but I've just picked a few. Federation can mean a lot of things, but there are two very relevant ones here. There's the UK Access Management Federation, which is the UK version of what OpenAthens offers in some cases, and there's the In Common Federation, which is the one based in the United States. And I like what they've said here, which is the trusted access platform. So that word trusted is a key part of what a federation really is and what it brings. So OpenAthens has a federation as part of the service, as I've showed in that sort of history of us. When we developed and built that federation, now it's a key part of everything we do, and the service wouldn't be as good as it is without that. Our federation works very similar to these federations, the UK and the In Common Trusted. And the In Common Federation there, but we are just global, whereas those ones are limited to just the countries and certain sectors and types of institution. We allow, ours is open to all customers. So what is a federation then? What are these? So a great way of it, it's a shared trust network. You have sort of two sides to a federation. You have, and I'm going to say some words here, you might have heard before or not, but it's kind of what builds up a federation. You've got an identity provider, an IDP, and that is, in our case, usually the library. And then you have a service provider, SP, which is the publishers or the platforms that are providing that content. And they are all joining this network, agreeing to like a certain way of working, a certain terms, and it makes everything just so much simpler and work so much more better, quicker. For example, if you needed to update a certificate or something, in most cases, you might have to go out to every single provider, content provider, and tell them you're making these changes, and that's multiple emails, lots and lots of cases, and then they have to make sure that they make that change on their end. And that's a lot of work involved in that. In a federation, once you update a certificate, it goes out to everyone you're part of or connected to in that network. There's no need for that multiple communication there and back. When they update the federation metadata, it will update everything that goes with it. So it just, it simplifies everything, in that centrally managed system. And we're obviously managing that and in the background. So you have no more proxy configuration files or anything like that. It is just keeping everything really simple and working together. An example then of some of the identity providers, part one side of the federation, there are a selection here to say there's academics, they're across all sectors. It doesn't matter, everyone who has that need, that purpose for access. And then the service providers, these are again just examples of service providers out there that are part of the OpenAthens Federation. So now, I recently was looking at this and I realized maybe perhaps this slide needs a bit of tweaking to really set home the the federated authentication, and particularly here, what I'm trying to explain is privacy preserving by design. So that is what SAML is, but there are a few tweaks that I might make to this slide in the future, but I'll run through it as it is now. So here we have an end user called Jane, or a user called Jane, and they are trying to access article X from the service provider, and they belong to institution Y. So in a federated method of access, what's happening here is they attempt to get that content. The service provider then needs to ask the institution, do they know who Jane is? And in this case, at this moment, the university, the IDP, does not know who Jane is. So then they ask Jane to confirm who they are by logging in to their details. So that'll be a username and password. So once, she's happy to confirm that, we then move that, the university then confirms with the service provider that yes, Jane is a student here, and they then can let Jane have access to the article if they have access, to it. Now, in terms of preserving that privacy, I must stress that, we're not actually, the only person who might know this is Jane and would know is the identity provider. The rest of it, there's no need for anyone else to know that except for Jane themselves. So what I might do here is just change that actually the word Jane isn't being passed between any of this. What does get passed is a completely anonymous sort of unique identifier for that user, and that will be unique to that user, and each time they access that service provider, it will be the same unique code, and that allows that to be attached to things like personal accounts if required. There's a lot really to go into this, and there's a lot more detail. It's trying to simplify authentication isn't easy, but this is one way in which we're attempting to do that, and also try and explain that it protects the privacy. OpenAthens in this case would sit kind of in between the identity provider there and the service provider. And again, OpenAthens doesn't need to know who a user is. We don't. We just need the identity provider to confirm that they are a user at their institution. Federated authentication, federated access at its bare minimum just doesn't need anything to identify personally who a user is. And we can show that in demos at a future date if you'd like to know more about it. So I hope that kind of helps. Like I say, it's not an easy one to do, federated authentication in a short space of time, but hopefully that has helped in some case understanding. how federated authentication works. So number one about OpenAthens is, we often get questions about our reporting module. And so yes, OpenAthens comes with a reporting module as standard as part of the service. It's very easy to sort of demo this. So if you ever want to delve into more detail on it, happy to do that. But I'm just going to give a very quick overview of it with just this slide here. So we've got some screen grabs from what the module looks like. So you at the top left there, you have a sort of home page, and this gives you information to a reporting dashboard, shall we say, to offer, just an overview of what's happening with your account. There's a nice heat map there to kind of show the importance of, I always say the importance of the reach that the library has, a very good, impactful, very quick thing to show this is where our users are accessing content from, and this is the reach that the library space has. And then you can see things like total authentications, your total accounts, those that are regularly using the service, and you've got all your resources in one place. I must stress, what does OpenAthens log in this scenario? You might get we get our counter reports, we get other reports direct from the publisher themselves. Our reports, what we mark as usage is different. So we are logging the authentication moment. So when a user arrives at a site, that's what we log. We don't log, for example, the number of downloads they do, the number of clicks there are, because once we authenticate a user to a site, we then stop tracking them. We know we're not interested in doing that. We are, as I say, trying to protect privacy and the user's privacy there. But what we can do is give the granularity and the breakdown on the type of users accessing your usage, and all in one place. So once we go down into that, the picture on the bottom right there, I appreciate it might be quite blurry and not much detail, but really what I wanted to focus on here was with that red line, you can see it's bold and there's also a dotted version of it. And that's sort of the types of different usage we can give you. That bold line is telling you the total accesses, authentications to a site, to a platform. And the dotted line is telling you the number of individual accounts that went to it. So very quickly you can see if a resource is used by everybody, but maybe just once, or if there's one that's used a lot, but by a core set of users. And so then you're going to start building that picture of, should you sadly have to remove a subscription for whatever reason, or, you could then look and see which one will have the biggest impact. Should it be removed? There are many clever tools of OpenAthens where you can start restricting access to content. That will cover that. I've sadly had another date, hopefully. We've got lots of webinars to do that as well. But, you can start restricting usage, and then you can maybe offer content just for those core set of users rather than the whole institution. So start things you can start building there. All your resources will appear in this one graph, and you can, take the data, download it yourself. We can also report on any attribute you send us. So if you send us, for example, what faculty they're part of, what minor or major they're studying, whether they are a staff or student, if you have any of that information as an attribute, which I appreciate, you may not know, part of IT would have that, or you can group them manually in our system as well to get that information. But you can group those users into those groups and see how different groups are interacting with your different resources. So it's just building that picture of which ones are valuable to who, and potentially is there some cost savings involved in that, or how else can we go about promoting our resources? If you do set up a promotion, change it somewhere on your site, does it impact the usage side of it? And yeah, you can kind of see that live. I think it's within an hour we can show you the current accesses of your site on that. So that's the one that comes standard. We also do have a reporting API option. So we know that how, data these days, everyone's liking data, but how can we make use of that data? We can give you all our unaggregated data for your site, and you can put it into a Tableau or the Microsoft one, which I've got right now, or just a reporting functionality such as Panorama, and you can take that data and use it in there and compare it with things like counter reports and try and get that real complete usage and that complete understanding of your users and how they interact with your library content. I would expect that hopefully in the next year you might see a few case studies of that going in, of people building all this data together and actually then building reports that are really functional and really useful to make the most out of it and make important insights from that data. So that's the reporting API, but what I've shown you here is the reporting module, which comes as standard. And then that last question here is how long and what is involved in the implementation of OpenAthens? I wish there was a straight answer for how long. I'll cover that one first. Most implementations will take between 2 to 16 weeks. I'm sure you can appreciate how every institution is going to be different and is unique in some way. And so to give a specific timeline is very hard until we know more about your individual needs, and then we can give a much more accurate timeline on how long an implementation would take. But I would say most of our implementations fall within this time. We break down our implementations into sort of a step-by-step process and into 6 main steps. You will start off with a kickoff call. So this will be a time to meet your implementation specialist, the team you're going to be working with throughout this process, and making sure everyone's got all the right facts and information that they require to make sure the implementation is going to go well. At that stage, you'll also have access to your OpenAthens domain. You'll be able to access it, get into there, and just have a little play around with the domain area and see what's going on. Although we've got these in 6 steps, I would suggest after that first one and the last one, the rest of these can kind of all come in any order. But this is a nice order to go through, and there's a lot that will be happening at the same time. So the second one here, create accounts. Now, there are 2 ways in which you can use OpenAthens when it comes to creating accounts. 80%, I would say, of our customers will do what we call connect to a local directory. So they use local accounts. And what we mean by this is we will connect to your university's domain for their directory for their usernames and passwords. So your users and will log into OpenAthens using credentials that they use for everything else that the institution provides. That is what we call true single sign-on. It's a lot more seamless. It means that when they've logged into that service, they can log into all the other stuff and not have to log in again. So it's really nice and straightforward. You can connect multiple directories. If you do have multiple directories, that's not a problem. OpenAthens can handle that. But we also have an identity side to OpenAthens, so you can create accounts within OpenAthens and manage those yourselves within the OpenAthens system. So that's slightly different, but there is often a need for that. For example, you might provide content to walk-in users, alumni or something like that, where they're not part of the institution's directory, but they can still have access to your content. How will we manage those users? Well, OpenAthens can do that with that way. So that's something we would try and do very early on. The directory connection is a very straightforward process. In most cases, it takes half an hour with your IT team or a number of emails going back and forth. But yeah, there's lots of documentation on that, but we also help guide you through that part as well. I mean, it's often that is the involvement from IT is in that section, that first step. Once they've set up that connection, that's pretty much good to go from IT. They won't have any more involvement with OpenAthens and the implementation. Number 3, step 3 here, activate resources. This is the big one. This is what takes up all those weeks of implementation. Before we get to this stage, before we get to even the kickoff call, we'll probably ask for your list of your resources. So we are going to then contact all of those resource providers, telling them you're moving to OpenAthens and give them the relevant information required in order to get that OpenAthens set up and running. And so, as I'm sure you can imagine, that takes quite a bit of time if you've got hundreds and hundreds of resources to do it. We're also then dealing with, third parties and other people involved. So that's why the process here can just slow down a little bit as we tail them up. And we know that 16 weeks is to allow us to get those last few outliers that always are, which maybe there's problems. Maybe we need you to help contact them as well because they need your permission to do these changes. But that is the big part, that activating the resources. But we will do our outreach for you along with our partners and resellers as well. They will do that part. I mean, the setup process is very similar with across all our resellers and also with us, OpenAthens. Number 4, this is all a bit which involves yourselves a lot more, is the updating of links. So Yes, I'm afraid we are dealing with a new authentication process here. So, the links are going to need to be updated. So if you currently have a solution such as Easy Proxy, you're probably used to putting a prefix in front of your links to make sure they work. There are lots of often tools within services and platforms out there which help to make this process as easy as possible, but we will give you all the links to all the resources that you provide us. And if you have any problem links out there, I mean, we appreciate faculty might create their own page and have a page of their own links and stuff like that you may not know about until the implementation starts and they start saying it's broken. We can update those links for you. The tool is also available to yourselves and also to the general public. So anyone can create an OpenAthens link to a resource for their institution. And training can come with that, but it's a very standard tool that you can find on our website. But yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, we obviously sadly can't access a lot of your system, so you will have to update those links yourselves. And so that's kind of a manual process in that bit, which going alongside the activating resources can take time. But that's when you can start preparing for that sort of go live date with that part. The last step is integrate with other apps. So because OpenAthens can work with SAML and even just SAML straight up directly, you might have virtual learning environments or ILSs and things that work with that. And we can provide OpenAthens as access to those platforms and services as well, those applications. So yeah, if you do have there's a random application that your users have a separate username and password for at the moment, there's every opportunity that maybe that will work directly with OpenAthens as a one-to-one connection. And so we start integrating those and just making sure your whole library environment can all be, as much as we can, bring into that single sign-on environment just to make it as streamlined and straightforward as your users as possible. Then lastly, there is the handover process. So this is when we will hand over to the support side of things. And yeah, you're all good to go at that point, all running along. And yeah, OpenAthens as a fully hosted product comes with that support to help to help manage and run along for the rest of your time with OpenAthens. So that's, those 5 questions, and I've now tried to summarize them all into sort of one sentence answers. So yeah, hopefully, what is OpenAthens? You can pick and choose what you want there, but you can remember it's an identity and access management solution, providing the complete solution. I've tried to put 2 in there, but as I say, there's lots of options to that, but none of them are really wrong from what we've spoken about today. How is OpenAthens different to Easy Proxy? So OpenAthens is a fully hosted service which manages multiple methods of authentication compared to just proxy IP method of Easy Proxy, such as federated access. It provides its own federation open to all customers, and with that there are some end user benefits such as the access anywhere on the web and also supporting personalization. What is federated authentication? I think if some people saw I put this in, what's that, a few words, that's not right. But I mean, again, it's a big topic, but it's the process of identifying an individual within a shared trust network from an institution. I should probably add on that. So yeah, the OpenAthens reporting. OpenAthens can provide usage reports for all your library resources in one place. It can break down these reports to provide more granular usage, like what type of user is accessing which resources. And then how long and what is involved in an implementation of OpenAthens, just as we covered there. So we break it down into those 6 main steps: a kickoff meeting, create accounts, activate resources, update links, integrating with other apps, and then the handover at the end. And this can take usually between 2 to 16 weeks. But yeah, we can give a much more accurate deadline in further conversations with yourselves directly. So that comes to the end of what I wanted to present and those questions. It's great if there are questions about questions. So yeah, I'll hand over now to see if any questions have come in, and I'll be happy to answer them.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, we have about 20 minutes here, folks, so feel free to put in as many questions as you'd like. The first one we've received, James, is can you explain SAML more?
Oh, wow. So SAML. I'm trying to think of how best to describe SAML. I've even got a standard assertion Your language. Oh, what's it stand for? I really should know that, but I've suddenly had a brain fade on that one. So SAML is it's designed. It was designed with authentication in mind, and so the SAML part of it is the language that's been used in order to share that information to users and to between the identity provider and the service provider. That's honestly probably the best I can do it. And what I will do is try and come up with a much better answer from someone a bit more technical. It's just it gets very technical very quickly with SAML. So take that for now, but I will follow up. And yeah, perhaps with this, we can send out a much more detailed description of what SAML, but I wanted to try and keep it quite, yeah, sort of low level at this stage because it can get quite beyond my head as well. And I don't want anything to say too wrong about SAML. So sorry, I can't give a straight answer for that one, but we will get it for you.
Great. Thanks so much, James. And yeah, as a note, there are some multiple links in the chat for requesting quotes, viewing more explanations, booking free demos, and so on. So you can check those links in the chat. Next question here. Is there a separate admin account for gathering stats? How do we access them?
Yeah, so you can, so yes, in terms of an admin, you have a dashboard for your OpenAthens domain area, and within that, it separates to the reporting module, and you can give administrator rights to anyone at within your institution, but you can also control what they have access to. So yes, the reporting module can be something that some will have access to, but not everybody. So yeah, you can manage the access to it in that way. You can also just set up shared reports to be scheduled. So every now and then someone will get the report that maybe is vital or important to them, but they won't necessarily see the reports for everything else you're reporting on.
Great, thank you. And we just put a link in the chat, a resource on OpenAthens website with more information on SAML. Thanks for posting that, Michael. Another question here. Can you tell us about the levels of support offered with OpenAthens?
Yeah, so the support is something that we really pride ourselves on. We don't offer different levels of support. It is just, the support comes with the package. And, it will be very similar across our resellers as well. I must stress that. I mean, in North America, most of our customers are with our resellers, and we hold them to very high standards that we hold ourselves to, that our customers ask of us. So we do have a service level agreement that you can find on our website. I don't know, Michael, we've got a link to that. If you can post it in there, that can explain the levels of support we aim to achieve and bring on. And I know from the last year, we've certainly achieved those levels of support. So it's a fully hosted solution, as you can manage. As you can imagine, there is a phone you can ring. You always ring that way. There is also an built ticketing system where you can just quickly raise a ticket with our support desk, and the level and the SLA will explain the different levels and expectations you can have from support from us and our partners.
Great, thank you so much, James. Another question here. This one's a little bit long, so bear with me here as I read it out. So our library handles authentication for more than just the university. It handles public library, public school library, state library, and more. We've had to have a script in the past to handle all the various authentication scenarios. How well does OpenAthens scale when having to glue together multiple SSO systems, some federated, others not, as well as systems without SSO?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. That's certainly what we would start verging into, the sort of more complex builds of OpenAthens. But as a product, it's very flexible to manage these kind of builds. So you mentioned there having different libraries, and I imagine within that they probably have different content, but maybe there's shared content that's available across all those libraries. I mean, the best way it would be to have a discussion to actually explain and show how we can build that for you, because there are different options available. But OpenAthens can manage these because of the ability to manage different types of users from different directories. So we can use that information to help group those users into those different libraries. We can, what we would call, give each library its own entity ID within a larger entity ID within a larger organization. And so you start building into the more complex side of OpenAthens there, where we would have sub-organizations, and they have their own level of administration as well to help access to the content that they have. whilst also sharing content with the wider groups in the organization. So I'd say OpenAthens, we've had a lot of experience around those sort of setups, and a call would be a great way just to understand how it currently is, and then we can certainly explain how OpenAthens would manage those different types of access, whether they're using SSO at the moment, IP, proxy. Yeah, we can certainly see how we can cover it all for you.
Excellent. Thanks, James. Another question here. How do you add a new resource after the initial implementation?
So we have a resource catalog in the domain area, so I could share that today. And in that is listed the thousands of resources that our customers use OpenAthens to access. So it's a shared resource catalog in that sense. In there we have all our federated resources and all our proxy, proxy resources. If you ever look at it, you'll probably see that there's a lot more proxy than federated, but that's because, there are just so many service providers and platforms out there that just use IP as a method of access. They don't use the federated, but all the big ones use the federated method. So we see most usage going through there. So if you want to add a new one, if it's not in the catalog at all, that will involve just a quick support ticket, and we can then create it and put it in the catalog. If it's already in the catalog, you can either use the support or you can do it yourselves. You will tell that provider, that resource, when you're setting it up, how you're accessing it. So from the catalog, you would know if it's federated or proxy. If it's a federated resource, you would give them your OpenAthens federation information. If it's a proxy, you would give them your OpenAthens IP address. And then once they say, yeah, that's done, it's a simple case of ticking a box within the catalog saying allocate this, and you allocate that resource to your institution. There are options then to allow to allocate it to everybody, or if you do have permission sets and restrictive mode in OpenAthens for different types of users to different content, you would then tick who has access to that resource.
Great. Thank you so much, James. We'll give it just a little bit here to make sure there are no other final questions. And while we wait for any final questions to come in, I just want to remind everyone, since this came up in the chat, we have been recording. By the end of tomorrow, you'll all receive a follow-up email with a link to view the recording. This will also be posted to the American Library's website once it is available, so keep your eyes peeled. All right, just double checking the chat, making sure no questions have come in to wrap up with. All right, James, I'm not seeing anything else. Anything you'd like to say before we close the event?
No, just thank you, everybody. I hope it's been very useful for you today, and hopefully we'll hear from you in the future. Or please come visit us at any of the ALA events. We're usually there, so please come by our booth.
Thanks so much, James. All right, everyone, take care. The chat will be included in the playback of the recording, so you can grab all of those links that were posted from OpenAthens. We hope you all have a great rest of your week. Take care. Bye, James.
Cheers. Thank you all. Bye.